So, welcome back once again to Third Age Reforged and to another battle that's on the test build, and it's another one that was sent to me by J Monster. This one after a couple of tweaks, I believe, to the archers and their ammunition and such. So again, it's sort of minor tweaks now before the patch, so again, you will likely not see most of this in the replay. It's mostly stuff going on behind the scenes that will sort of help with the balancing moving forward. But yeah, J Monster, he deserves a lot of credit actually, to be fair. I do want to say that before we get into this battle, because he's put in a lot of work, particularly over the past few weeks, to really move the new patch along. So he deserves a big thank you for that, and really he seems to be the one that's sort of really taken the lead in terms of the testing in particular and telling the devs what needs to be done, which is very good. And of course, again, the link to his channel, the link to the Reforged channel as well, will be in the description below for other things that are going to be going on in the new patch, so you should definitely go and check that out, as well as these ones that I'm going to be showing. But yes, this is going to be on the grassy plain, which visually is not the most interesting map, but it is of course the most pure expression of a battlefield you can have. And you know, it's also very good to see how the bounces work. It's very foggy, you can't actually see the other armies through the fog, which is actually pretty neat. But yes, if you don't care about the army compositions, you can go ahead and skip through this. But before I get on to the army compositions, as we go back in on the wargs here, I'm going to say that the straw poll is now sort of done, and I'm going to be doing the faction overviews two at a time. So the top two, the first one surprised me actually. It was the dwarves of Khazad-dûm. So they will be the one that will be going first, and the one that will be just after them will be the elves of Imladris. So those will be the first two. And again, I will, whenever the first faction overview comes out, I will have a straw poll in that one as well, and you'll be able to choose two evil factions that you want me to do, because I'm going to do two good, and then two evil, and then two good, just so that we get some variety, because otherwise I do fear that maybe it will have four elf faction overviews in a row, which, you know, I want to spread them out a little bit, so we'll have the some evil factions after Khazad-dûm and Imladris. But yes, those will be the first two, arguably the two most quality focused factions in the game, and at least I believe that's what Khazad-dûm will be when they're all finalised. But yes, onto the army compositions, and as you can see, the wargs now look a little bit less like walnuts with legs, because a new high-res model has been given to them, I believe from the Battle for Middle-earth. J Monster is playing as the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, kind of the black sheep of the Orc family. Whenever you ask people what their favourite Orc faction is, the Misty Mountains is probably the least likely answer ever since Vanilla, arguably, simply because, you know, people tend to prefer the brute force of Gundabad, or the well-balancedness of Isengard, or the really nasty high tier stuff of Mordor. Misty Mountains kind of gets left behind there, but they are arguably one of the most deadly anti-cavalry factions in the game now. They have a lot of wargs, and wargs are very potent anti-cavalry tools. And the Bolgs champions, of course, are the best of the Misty Mountains sort of mounted units. And the the Warg Riders, but I believe Warg Skirmishers are exclusive to the Misty Mountains now, so they are going to be the only ones with mounted Javelin Wargs, which are basically the ultimate anti-cavalry unit. So we have the Warg Riders here, and does he have some Warg Skirmishers? No, he just has Warg Riders, but, you know, even so, the Warg Skirmishers, I think, are a Misty Mountains exclusive unit now. But he's got a pretty decent Warg sort of force, and he will need that because of the two armies that he's facing. And of course, this is a free-for-all, so this is a very different type of battle to the previous one where it was sort of a line. Now there's going to be a lot more manoeuvring around one another, because it is all for one. And we have some Blackback Mountain Berserkers here. Of course, they're still probably going to be the most deadly in terms of the Misty Mountains infantry. Provided you can keep them out of skirmish fire, they will be able to do quite a lot of damage indeed. And then if we look over here, we can see the Orc bodyguards. They've been given a new updated model. There's this guy here. There's Azog, who looks a little bit better in this current patch. He's still got a kind of weird arm, but that really can't be helped with the way that the units are made. The Orc bodyguards have been given a new lick of paint as well, so they are now very distinctive from their standard heavy goblin brethren. Speaking of which, as we move forward into sort of the main bulk of J Monster's army, he's got some black Uruks of the mountains. Of course, these guys, sort of standard shock infantry. There's 253 of them. Again, they're not going to win any prizes against some of the equivalent human units, but if you can saturate your line with them, that's quite a lot of damage you could be doing. He's also got heavy goblin spears over here again. Spearmen are going to be very important in the upcoming patch, I think. Their usefulness has definitely been increased, which was badly needed. And then here he's got a full line of mountain Uruk blades, the slightly more effective sword and board unit that you can field en masse as the Misty Mountains. He's got some more heavy goblin spears here, and then he's got a lot of heavy goblin infantry. He's also got he's got some heavy goblin archers sort of out here, I believe, as a sort of initial skirmish force. I don't know whether he remembered to move them or not, because they are very far away from his lines. He needs to be very careful. But yeah, a lot of heavy goblins with some wargs and then some nasty elites at the back. That's largely what you'll be able to expect from the Misty Mountains. Now as we sort of go through the fog, we'll come to Starling, who's playing as Dale, and I'm glad that we get to show off some of Dale's new unit models, because here we have the Morroquindi Bows, which are it's a new name for the Avari Elder Archers, and they look very nice. They've been given a new lick of paint. Again, more detail has been put onto them, and of course, Elven Archers, they're going to be very, very effective in terms of accuracy. Still going to be very effective, not quite as OP as they once were across the board though, of course. And here we have the Earls, of course. They are largely going to be for the same purpose. Obviously, Sword and Shield, very, very durable units indeed. And then obviously we have the Dalian Paladins, the strongest of the Dale Shock Infantry. And then if we go over here, we can also see the more high-res version of the Dalian Cavalry. Obviously these, I think that the Dalian unit models across the board have just been given a lot more detail, and I like that. Obviously the Dalian Cavalry in the previous patch, and I believe it will be the case here, they were very fast, very effective shock cav, but maybe a little bit more fragile than their equivalents. And then we also have some Dalesmen over here, some cheap shock units, and then over here we have the Dale Dragon Slayers, one of the very few archer units to retain their AP bonus, but of course they will suffer in other ways. Their unit size is much smaller, and I don't believe they have as much ammunition as some of the sort of standard elite archers. If we move over here to the sort of main bulk of his army, we'll just go and see over here the Dalian Spearmen. Again, just get a nice look at these sort of updated unit models. The cloak is a little bit more high detailed, and so is the uniform. And then if we look in here, we still have the Dalian Earls, still the same tanks on horseback that they once were. And then we have a lot of Lake Town Pikes, a lot of Lake Town Bowmen as well, so low tier archers as well. Dale obviously going to be archer focused, and then he's got some Dalian Spearmen over here. So he's got his elites facing the Misty Mountains, and he's got his sort of main bulk of his army facing off against the other faction, which is down here, which is Mekdi, who's playing as Rohan. So he has sort of reprised his role here, and he's got Riddermark archers here at the front. Obviously these guys are, it's the new name for the Yawling archers. So Rohan with their low tier archers here at the front got their stakes here as well, so to prevent any cavalry charges. But to take Rohan head on in a cav engagement, you'd have to be, other than canned, you'd have to be quite brave to do that. There are some factions that can pull it off, but you have to be careful. He's got a lot of Riddermark riders and Aelingers here. He's also got some Rohan nobles, I believe. I just saw them. So he's got Rohan nobles, and actually he's got some Hornburg Guard here, the new name for the Helmhammers, obviously the most deadly of Rohan's foot infantry. I saw some Westfold Guard over here, which I'd quite like to get a nice close-up on. Well, the Westfold Guard are the new name, I think, for the Marshals of the Red, and the Westfold Marshals are the Riddermark Axemen. I think that's how it is. It's hard to tell. They're all mixed in together. Yeah, the Westfold Red Shields are the new name for the Marshals of the Red. Rohan Nobles is where the General is hiding, I think. Or is this the General's unit? Here are the Red Shields, so we're going to get to see them in action. The highest tier Rohan Missile Cav. I was going to say Shock Cavalry then. They're anything but Shock Cav. Riders of the Fold as well, and Riddermark Horse Archers, so he's got a lot of Skirmish Cav, of course. And then back here, we have the previously Kalanador Knights. We have the Sons of Yawle. These guys are, of course, the strongest of the Rohan cavalry units, and possibly still the strongest cav in the game. We'll see. We'll have to wait until the top 10s before I get into all of that nonsense, but now we shall begin. And 28,000 frames is quite a lot for a 3-man free-for-all, and you can see that the mist is going to make things quite interesting here. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I mean, certainly Mekdi's micro is going to have to be on point with all of his cavalry, particularly with some of the dangers that he faces. The Dalian archers will be able to do a real number on his lower tier cavalry, and the Misty Mountains wargs will be able to do a lot of damage to all of his cavalry if he's not careful. And it looks like he's going to send his horses en masse over to the Misty Mountains, which is not the worst idea, simply because his missile cavalry will be able to do a lot of damage to the wargs at range, and if he can get charges off onto the Misty Mountains infantry, they are going to be in danger of breaking pretty quickly. And he's leading the way with these Rohan nobles over here. Rohan nobles, of course, heavy cavalry. They do need to be careful not to get too far in front of his main cav force over here, which I believe he's sending over all of his missile cav first, as well as a couple of units of melee cav to cover them, which is probably wise considering the wargs. The wargs, of course, will do quite a lot of heavy damage. I'm not sure how J-Monster is going to deal with all of this cavalry all at once, particularly the missile cav. That is a lot of missile cav. Again, as we saw in the last battle where DI brought a lot of Candish missile cav, they did run out of fangs towards the end. And you can see he's actually charging in, head first, into the heavy goblins. And J-Monster not quick enough in getting his heavy goblins into the cover of his archers. Having said that, these Rohan nobles are going to take a lot of casualties here, particularly now with the wargs coming in. I would question, yeah, the Rohan nobles are routing immediately because of, again, if you send a unit in on their own, they're going to rout like that. So again, it's not really worth doing a bit of damage to those heavy goblins when you lose a unit of Rohan nobles. So again, charging in from the front. Ailing, as this tactic I think would work if you sort of charge forward with a full complement of cavalry. With single units like this, you know, they're shaken already, they're wavering. Again, the wargs are going to cause fear to the horses. The Aelingers are actually able to get out before they break, but that's a lot of Rohan's cavalry that he's lost, and he doesn't have the luxury of expendable units as much as the Orcs of the Misty Mountains have. Meanwhile, if we look over here, you see the getting close to the red shields. Red shields, of course, the strongest of the Rohan horse archers. And you can see that the heavy goblins are going to try and get some damage done on these Rohan horses. And again, you can see that the Rohan horses are targeting the wargs. Definitely the smart thing to do. These warg riders over here and the Bolgs champion sort of wrapping around. But ultimately, I think that this sort of initial engagement has actually gone in favour of J-Monster. He's lost a lot of goblins, but that's a lot of horses that Rohan has lost. It was a very bold charge, but I would have suggested he probably needed to support those Rohan nobles and Aelingers with more cavalry. But then that would have also left him a little bit more vulnerable to Dale on the other side. So it's a delicate balancing act. The Aelingers are coming in. The Warg Riders, that unit of Warg Riders has taken a lot of losses to this Rohan skirmish cav contingent. And the player that this favours most of all, of course, is Dale, because he's going to be able to keep his ammunition for later on. You can see these heavy goblin spears taking a lot of losses. The Rohan nobles have returned after they initially broke, but they are taking a lot of damage. The heavy goblin spears are also taking a lot of damage, but again, the heavy goblins are going to be able to sort of sustain these losses a lot more, and the Aelingers are now routing. Once again, the presence of the wargs is going to frighten the horses. And the wargs are coming over here as well, the Bolgs champions. So again, J-Monster does need to be careful because he could end up being kited by those Rohan horse archers. Again, horse archers are going to be a much bigger part of the game, particularly in open field battles like this now. But even so, Rohan do need to be careful because again, they're going to be firing in a lot of skirmish fire into this Misty Mountains army. But the Misty Mountains are going to be able to absorb that fire better than most. Meanwhile, if we look over here, we can see that it would appear that Dale are marching into position. Dale is sending their mounted earls around as well. Rohan still has cavalry back here. He's got some Riddermark riders and the Sons of Yorl. But he does need to be careful. The Westfold red shields are here as well. Again, the Riddermark archers are fighting, but again, in a skirmish fight like this, Dale is going to beat Rohan all day long. You know, Rohan would definitely need their horse archers on hand if they wanted to go toe-to-toe with Dale in a skirmish fight. If we look over here as well, he's got some pikes over here to make it so that the Rohan cavalry cannot charge into these bowmen and do a lot of damage. So yeah, Dale are doing pretty well for themselves at the moment. They definitely have the advantage in this fight at the moment, I would suggest. Their engagements have been the most favourable. If we look back over here, we can see that Rohan still have their cavalry moving around. Their melee cavalry has returned from routing, and I think that will be more of a factor in the current patch. I think sort of units will potentially rout like you saw to units like the wargs in terms of fear, but they will then come back. It's not like before where routing them was pretty much the end. Provided the unit isn't completely shattered, they will come back. You can see there's a lot of corpses around here, and again, Rohan are still settling for this horse archer approach. There's nothing I hate more than being skirmished down and not being able to do an awful lot about it, so I can picture myself despising Rohan and Khand in the coming patch, but this is a valid strategy. Horse archers are not good in melee, especially not to the Misty Mountains wargs. And of course, we have seen in the last battle as well with Khand that as soon as they run out of ammunition, other than probably the red shields are the exception here because they are a hybrid unit, these horse archers will not be too effective, and also the horse archers in general are quite weak as well. So counter archer fire from the heavy goblin archers even, which is a low tier archer unit, is able to sort of cut these units down to size a little bit. And I would still say that probably the Misty Mountains have had the better of this fight for the time being. I mean, the Warg Riders over here, the Bolgs champions are still in pretty much perfect health. They have, I think, lost a unit of wargs, and they've lost quite a lot of goblins, obviously, but the Misty Mountains, more than any other faction other than maybe Mordor, And even then, I would say the Misty Mountains maybe have the advantage there is in expendable units. You can afford to just throw things away, and it won't affect you too badly for a while. Obviously, eventually the losses will start to get terminal and your army will start to fall apart. But being expendable, oh, to be a goblin. Meanwhile, we'll go back over to here and we can see that Dale again. Seems like the skirmish is still kind of going on. Rohan need to be careful because, again, in terms of infantry, Dale has more. Dale have still got their elite corps sort of hanging back, though. It's kind of a stalemate over here. Rohan have got that elite infantry. Meanwhile, I think, has there been cavalry engagements back here? Sons of Yorl are running around. There has. That unit of Earls has been completely destroyed. I think by the Riddermark, by a combination of the archer fire and the cavalry here. Sons of Yorl, and again, there's a lot of Dale Earls over here, but there is also a couple of Rohan dead bodies over, sort of lying on the floor as well. So the Sons of Yorl are not in perfect health anymore, but of course, in terms of a cavalry powerhouse, this is still going to be one of the most deadly units you can fight on the battlefield. And they have the backup of these Riddermark riders as well. And the Dale Earls are quite slow as well, so getting in and around Rohan was never going to be too easy. And again, I seem to have missed that. But it would appear as if, you know, there's a bit of a standoff going on here between the Orcs of the Misty Mountains and the Rohan skirmish cabs. So the action is happening over here, and it is a skirmish battle, which again, if they are able to, Dale will always try and force you into a skirmish battle because they're going to be so good in that situation. Again, less so with their Lake Town bowmen and more so with their sort of higher tier archers. They're going to be able to withstand enemy archer fire and lay down a bit of a hurting on your archer line as well, which is going to be what makes Dale quite dangerous in the upcoming patch. You know, they're going to be able to adopt a sort of aggressive defensive posture, if that makes sense, where they sort of move their archers forward and sort of force you into coming to them. And it's not going to be easy for you to deal with that, because that's when mistakes are made in a sort of hasty advance to try and shut down the enemy. And this is what Dale are kind of doing here in a low tier sort of wet noodle fight with Rohan's archers. But the Riddermark archers, they're not going to be able to beat the Lake Town bowmen. And in fact, if we look here, Rohan has sort of run out of patience, it would seem. They're sending forward their Riddermark riders. They're taking a bit of fire from the Lake Town bowmen on the approach. You can see that the Lake Town bowmen able to kind of get behind the spears, and this is going to mean that the Riddermark riders are going to take some more losses. The bowmen were able to largely get out of there. And again, I think that DI had to do something there, because he was going to struggle, and these Riddermark riders are going right across the front of these Lake Town bowmen now, so they're going to take more losses again. They managed to get some kills on the Lake Town bowmen, but they are still alive, which means they're still going to be able to shoot. And again, this is going to be the problem that Rohan are going to face. How do you crack the nut that is Dale? Meanwhile, we go back over here, the sort of Rohan horse archers have sort of repositioned. It would appear as well that an agreement has been reached, because the Misty Mountains are sort of moving over towards Dale, and I think they realised that their fight earlier on has given Dale the advantage, so it's time for them to sort of even the odds a little bit, which is going to sort of necessitate Dale getting a little bit more aggressive with how they sort of do things here, because they are going to send forward their bowmen again, try and sort of skirmish down Rohan just a little bit more. But again, Rohan can afford to lose their Riddermark archers perhaps more than anything else in their army. Most of what makes Rohan strong back here, like their shock infantry, their Westfold red shields, and their Sons of Yorl and their Hornburg guard, they're still in perfect health, and they're not really going to mind losing the skirmish fight here to Dale. And again, Dale has split their army off into two. What's going on down here? Has there been betrayal? It would appear that there has, because the horse archers are trying to get in behind the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, and they're taking sort of the Orcs of the Misty Mountains having none of it, killing off a few more of Rohan's horse archers. I don't know how much ammunition Rohan's horse archers have left, but again, I would argue that they haven't really killed too much of what makes the Orcs of the Misty Mountains effective in this situation. The Blackback Berserkers are still alive somewhere, I would presume. Yes, they are. So are the Orc Bodyguards, and so are the Bolgs Champions. Really, it's only lower tier goblins that Rohan has really been able to take chunks out of. But if we go back over to here, the skirmish continues. The Lake Town bowmen still firing. Riddermark archers sort of repositioning, trying to get into a better firing position, but again, they're just going to take losses. They will lose, but they will also force Dale to expend most of their archer ammunition. And when that is done, they still have their Morroquendi bows and their Dale Dragon Slayers, of course. I don't know, this army over here, This unit of mounted earls is still alive, so Dale have only lost one unit of mounted earls so far to Rohan's deadly heavy cavalry. That's Sons of Yorl. They've still got their Riddermark riders as well, despite taking a bit of a beating. Rohan need to be careful of this shock infantry. As soon as it gets into range, if I was Dale, I would definitely be targeting these Westfold Marshals and Red Shields. Take away some of the potency of that Great Axe infantry. They are actually coming in here, and the Dalian Spearmen will not win that fight. There's some Lake Town pikes back there, but again, there's Lake Town bowmen as well. I think this is where Dale's sort of having their lower tier units off in a separate part of the battle. We saw that in the last battle where Rudauer did it as well. I don't think it's going to stand them in particularly good stead here against Rohan. Because as soon as this turns into a melee fight with the shock infantry, if Rohan engage properly, the Dale infantry will not be able to stand up to a lot of these units. The Red Shields in particular are going to be able to lay down a real hurting. Lake Town bowmen are not going to be able to stop them, and the Hornburg Guard are also on the way. So Rohan being aggressive, forcing Dale to utilise their archers on units that they didn't really need. And now this is where Dale are going to start to struggle. Getting here, defeat is almost a certainty, of course. The Hornburg Guard and the Westfold Red Shields, Rohan's two most potent pure infantry units, going to be able to get a lot of damage done there. We see there's another unit of Westfold Red Shields coming forward to help the Marshals. Westfold Marshals, of course, the renamed Riddermark Axeman. Rather confusingly, the old Yorling Axemen are now called the Riddermark Axeman. The Lake Town pikemen are coming forward. The pikemen will be able to make this line hold a little bit longer than it otherwise would. And perhaps then they can use the Earls, but I mean, if Rohan send forward their Sons of Yorl, which ironically are actually lagging a little bit further behind, these Earls are not going to be an issue for the combination of Rohan cavalry and their archers, which still have some ammunition. The Earls trying to get some hammer and anvil, I would think, but the Sons of Yorl are coming over. Meanwhile, if we just go and quickly have a look over here, we can see that the Rohan horse archers trying a bit of hit and run, which would suggest to me that they're probably out of ammunition at this point. Those Riddermark horse archers went too deep into the Misty Mountains lines and the Warg Riders ripped them apart. The Red Shields, those horse archers are routing again. Horse archers are going to have less morale. The Riders of the Fold slightly more beefy, and the Red Shields, of course, definitely more durable. But here, the horse archers, as far as a melee threat goes, there's going to be no problem for the Misty Mountains to ward them off. With all of these spearmen and particularly the wargs around. Actually, Rohan still have some ammunition. The Riders of the Fold and the Red Shields still have some ammo, which is going to be important because, again, in melee they're not really going to stand too much of a chance. Right, what happened over there? And as you can see, I did miss it technically. You can see these mounted earls going to be no match for the Riddermark Riders and the Sons of Yorl. Again, with the archers, the mounted earls will do pretty decent against the Riddermark Riders, but with the ranged fire support, probably not so much. See here, the Sons of Yorl. Now the tables have turned. Dale were trying to get some hammer and anvil, I think, but Rohan are going to be the ones able to do that now, and they're going to clatter into these Lake Town bowmen. And here they go. Obviously in sustained melee they're shaken already. The Lake Town bows. Rohan are having to commit a lot of their elites here though, which may well cost them in the late game when the Misty Mountains and Dale commit their real melee powerhouses. Those mounted earls are able to get into the archers, but the Riddermark Riders probably going to come back. The Hornburg Guard have taken barely any losses. However, the Westfold Red Shields have taken quite a few more. The pikemen, they were able to hold for a little while, but ultimately, you know, the overall quality of Rohan's infantry. Over here, actually, the Dalian Spearmen have done a pretty decent job, but the Westfold Marshals are now in behind the lines. Ultimately, while their line has held out better than I expected it would, particularly these Dalian Spearmen, ultimately, Rohan's infantry is going to be able to do enough damage to deal with this. And I think that Rohan, again, if they had more infantry, they would have been able to do more damage more consistently. You can see that also he peeled off some of his infantry to go around and hit them from behind, which is definitely the way to go against pikemen, of course. And again, the Sons of Yorl ripping through those Lake Town bowmen who are now broken and fighting to the death. The Hornburg Guard going backwards to finish off these earls. The Riddermark archers still alive, so they're not a total loss. They still have some ammunition as well. Their potency as melee infantry in the late game is probably going to be quite limited though. The Sons of Yore are still pretty healthy, honestly. Those Lake Town pikemen are further back. A lot of this Dalian infantry, however, is routing. Again, the Westfold Red Shields. Still going to be a difficult unit to stop, particularly with all of this sort of, again, spearmen taking a charge from heavy axemen. The amount of damage they take quickly is going to be pretty crippling, especially from a higher tier unit like the Westfold Red Shields. And here come more of them. I will say though that the standard Westfold Marshals have performed very poorly against these pikes, which you would probably expect as well. I mean, they are on the lower end of the spectrum, they're not as heavily armoured, so the attacks of the pikemen will be much more effective. These Dalian spearmen are routing pretty much immediately. Again, the Westfold Marshals, they are meant to be lower tier shock infantry, sort of decent, but not anything too special. But yeah, Rohan have victory over here. Ultimately, Dale's lack of quality on the ground was a bit of a decisive blow here for them. But so Rohan have victory over here. I would say that they've kind of lost the fight that they sort of had against the Misty Mountains. They've still got some some routing units. The Red Shields seem to have been mopped up as well. So yeah, one victory and, well, one relative victory and one relative defeat for Rohan here, who has been the most proactive player. But then as Rohan, you need to be with all of that high mobility cavalry. Moving into the late game, I would say probably the advantage I would put in favour of the Misty Mountains, simply because Dale have taken some pretty nasty losses. Rohan have had to fight 2 battles, and the Misty Mountains, I think, have managed to weather the Rohan cavalry storm a little bit better than Dale, which does mean that I think that the Misty Mountains going into the later game have the advantage here. But then again, a lot of this unit is lower tier stuff. They're not going to perform very well against stuff like the Dalian Paladins. But then again, if Dale and Rohan decide to join forces here, things could get a little bit messy. Also, you have to remember that at this point in the game, the Orcs of the Misty Mountains probably have the strongest cavalry force. I mean, Dale still have 1 unit of completely healthy Dalian cavalry, but that's not going to be able to stop the Wargs because it's light cavalry. They'll get ripped apart. And the Sons of Yore, while they may be strong, in terms of an outright fight, that's too many Wargs for them to tank through on their own. And the Riddermark Riders, of course, light cavalry again, they're not going to stand much of a chance at all against Wargs. You've seen how potent Wargs can be. You've seen how potent Horse Archers can be. But now here we have the Morroquendi bows are going to be pretty essential here for Dale if they're going to sort of turn this around. Because you can see that they're kind of being converged on from 2 sides. Rohan kind of repositioning. Rohan could be the kingmaker here. Dale are intent on sort of assuming a defensive posture. The Dale Dragon Slayers, again, if I was them, I would probably want to kill the Bolg's champions, if at all possible. Simply because while the Blackback Berserkers are a very strong unit, the Bolg's champions in this case are probably the thing more than anything which will do the damage. A couple of units of Athala Rangers popping into view as well, so they do have a pretty potent skirmish line. And they are going to move forward, and they're probably going to force the Orcs of the Misty Mountains' hand here. So Misty Mountains is going to have to make a decision. Will they try and tank all of this ranged firepower from Dale? Rohan still have got a couple of archers left as well, albeit the Riddermark archers are not particularly... Those Riddermark archers are reloading. What are they firing at? Or is it just... Well, I think it might be bugged, actually. As soon as they start moving again. Rohan's army is small. And again, this is the price you pay for trying to fight 2 battles at once. But again, I do admire the fact that Rohan were the ones to make the first move on the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, because a free-for-all can turn into a bit of a Mexican standoff, which is never a particularly fun experience, which is why I often recklessly charge in a free-for-all and end up dying. But at least I can hold my head up high. And Rohan can too, regardless of whether he wins here or not. He's probably got the hardest task on his hands, simply because his cavalry's pretty battered. His infantry had to be committed to destroy that Dalian resistance. Dale could still yet pull it out with their skirmishers. But if the Orcs of the Misty Mountains manage to get a nice melee engagement, this battle is going to favour them. And in fact, the Orcs of the Misty Mountains are retreating. So they are not going to allow Dale to skirmish them down that easily. Here are the Red Shields. routing and breaking all over the place. They're trying their best. So yeah, this is going to be one of those moments in the free-for-all where things sort of take a little bit of a, you know, a little bit of a quiet moment. It's quiet on the Eastern Front. Again, the Athala Rangers in general, will be better in the current patch. And particularly against a faction with a lot of manpower like the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, the added efficiency of that Ranger's body piercing, which I believe they have, is going to stand them in good stead here. Having said that, they really cannot afford to be caught in melee. I think that the issue the Orcs of the Misty Mountains have here is Rohan here. I mean, if it was just Dale, the Orcs of the Misty Mountains would charge in and probably overwhelm Dale. They do have some units of genuine quality like the Paladins and the Earls, but not enough that they would be able to stop all of that Misty Mountains infantry. But this Rohan army over here is still enough of a problem that the Orcs of the Misty Mountains cannot afford to charge in. Misty Mountains, I think, have got the lowest morale in terms of their sort of basic units like heavy goblin infantry of any faction other than maybe Mordor. So you've seen how morale sort of worked against Rohan here, where they sort of charged in individual units and it really went quite poorly for them very quickly. Well, the Orcs of the Misty Mountains could well be experiencing that as well if Rohan and Dale decide to attack them in a pincer movement, which it looks like they intend to. Dale do need to be careful, however, because they do need to target the right units. I mean, the Black Uruk's probably a pretty decent target. The Blackback Berserkers are hidden, so they won't be able to see them. The Wargs especially, though. I mean, this is what is probably making me think that the Misty Mountains have really got the advantage in this fight, simply because the cavalry advantage is technically theirs. Which, if he's able to get some nice charges off on either Rohan or Dale, their armies are small enough that that might be it for them. But what is going to happen here? This is the Mexican standoff. As you can see, I'll be interested to see how the Blackback Berserkers do if they can get into melee, of course. If they get revealed and the Dalian Archer line sees them, it's going to be night-night for them. What is going on over here? So Rohan, you can see how stretched thin they are. The Riddermark Archers are firing, however, I believe. Again, Rohan need to make an alliance, and I think that Rohan and Dale have probably come to an understanding, because you can see how big the army of the Orcs of the Misty Mountains is compared to the two human factions. There are the Hornburg Guard. The Hornburg Guard is still looking pretty good. They lost a few unit models, but not that many. And the Sons of Yule, they have taken some losses to the Dalian cavalry, but they're still pretty healthy. I mean, if the Wargs can be dealt with by Dale's archers, who knows? Rohan here, maybe. Could this be the biggest betrayal ever? If he charged his cavalry into those Morroquendi bows. That would basically hand the game to the Misty Mountains, though, so I doubt he's going to do that. Or is he? Some of these Riddermark Archers are firing. It seems like they're firing into the Orcs of the Misty Mountains line. This is tense. I'm not sure what Rohan is going to do. Actually, here we can see that the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, it seems like they are going to move forth. What is going on back here? Well, those Warg Riders have taken some losses. The Bolgs Champions ran off because, again, I would assume that was the Dragon Slayers trying to deal with that Misty Mountains mounted threat. Heavy Goblin Spears are coming in, taking some fire from the front, able to withstand it a little better than most simply because of their spears. Again, they're going to try and go for the Dalian Cavalry. Try and make it more difficult for the Dalian Archers, but here we go. The Misty Mountains have chosen their moment. They're going to move forth, try and use their numbers. See how this goes. Both Rohan and Dale will try and crush the Misty Mountains and then move on to one another. So this Dalian Cavalry is moving out wide. I mean, I would worry for the fate of these Dalesmen. They are a low tier unit. They're not going to have that much staying power. The Dalian Cavalry taking some archer fire from the Heavy Goblin Archers. The Wargs are coming over here. This could be a real problem for the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. Standard Goblins have a tendency to break. They're already wavering, and that wasn't that strong a charge. But now the Wargs are here, which is turning the tables on the Dalian Cavalry. But yes, the frontline engagement is on. The Blackback Mountain Berserkers are coming in, and the Earls are going to struggle here. Saturating the line with Uruk Blades to make sure they don't fall so quickly. The Dalian Paladins, of course, victory seems certain for them with the support of these pikes against standard heavy goblins. But the goblins are great in number, and as you can see over here, the Bolg's champions are here, and the Bolg's champions are going to be in melee against the Sons of Yore. I could have sworn that Yore was E-O-R-L, although I might be wrong about that. I mean, I'm ignorant when it comes to Lord of the Rings lore. The Bolg's champions taking damage from the archers. Of course, wargs do very poorly under archer fire, even the strongest of them. Having said that, the Sons of Yore took a couple more losses. Here come the heavy goblin archers, and now the engagement is happening over here as well. The Hornburg Guard defeat seems certain, actually. There's Black Uruks, the mountains. I think that will turn around as soon as the support of the Westfold Red Shield is taken into account, but that is a lot of Black Uruks. As I'm sure you can see, the hammer and anvil is still continuing over here. The Dalian cavalry actually able to get a decent charge off onto those Orc bodyguards, but the Orc bodyguards are, of course, probably the most durable single infantry unit the Misty Mountains have. And now the Dalian cavalry is finding itself kind of trapped and lost among this goblin infantry line, and they're also taking arrow fire. So the Dalian cavalry, but it largely has done its job. It distracted the enemy quite a lot, but over here you can see that the Dalesmen fell apart in the face of the Black Uruks and the heavy goblin spears and the wargs. As we sort of get in here, you see the mountain Uruk blades and the blackback berserkers. Amazingly, the balance of forces is evenly matched. So the earls, probably that's due to the fact that there is archer fire flying backwards and forwards. But the blackback berserkers should certainly have enough damage here to deal with the more defensive earls. The bigger problem that the Orcs of the Misty Mountains will have is dealing with these paladins. The paladins are a real powerhouse when it comes to dishing out damage and staying alive, which is something the blackback berserkers have a little bit more trouble with. The Sons of Yore are still sort of running around. I'm not sure. Oh, hello. The Dale Dragon Slayers have been engaged in melee by heavy goblin spears, so the Dragon Slayers should certainly win this fight, but just the fact that they aren't able to shoot their very dangerous arrows is a real loss. Meanwhile, if we look over here, these wargs are still alive. They're going to try and deal with the Sons of Yore, but it looks like Rohan has completely buckled the Misty Mountains force that was over here. Again, the Misty Mountains went more in on Dale, which I can certainly understand, but Rohan could yet turn this fight around for themselves, with the Misty Mountains routing before Rohan. Again, the standard goblins, they had no real linchpin over here. They didn't have Orc bodyguards or blackback berserkers to help hold the line together, and in the end it fell apart, as Orcs are wont to do. A unit of troll drummers might have been able to hold that line together, but now Rohan are able to sort of reform, and they will probably be able to sort of charge into the back of what remains of the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. These Riddermark riders coming in, helping out. And these Mountain Uruk blades, they're not going to last long in melee against Dalian paladins. And here you can see the blackback mountain berserkers. I think they're going to lead melee. They have actually managed to destroy the earls, or the earls routed. Some Dalian spearmen are running over here. Yes, indeed, the earls broke. The Orc bodyguards, they've taken some losses from cavalry charges and arrow fire, but they are now in with the blackback berserkers. Meanwhile, over here, we can see that a couple of Black Uruks of the mountains have come into melee with the Dale Dragon Slayers as well. But the Dragon Slayers are going to be able to weather this storm. And now the Dalesmen have also come back from routing, and they're going to help the General's unit. I would not send in the Orc bodyguards on their own over here. I mean, they will be able to easily deal with the Dalesmen, but the Dale Dragon Slayers, that's going to be a lot rougher. So things have turned around. The alliance of Dale and Rohan has kind of been able to beat back the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. And now we can see actually the clash of the Titans over here. The Blackback Mountain Berserkers, the Dalian Paladins and the Hornburg Guard all going at it hammer and tongs. Defeat seems certain. Defeat seems certain. Victory seems certain. So the Hornburg Guard, it's giving the advantage here to Rohan. Definitely a very back and forth fight. Rohan might be gaining the upper hand in this fight, to be honest with you. I mean, the Morroquendi bows are now caught in melee with red shields, but they are being supported by Dalian spearmen. Dale if these Morroquendi bows still have ammunition, which it looks like they do, I would say they will probably be able to pull it out, simply because, yeah, I mean, there you can see the Rohan General being carved down by Athala Ranger fire. You can see that they have 2 units of Athala Rangers and the Morroquendi bows, and they still have a few units of infantry that are going to be able to sort of support them, which I think is going to be what is going to see this one out for Dale in this late stage of the battle. There are still just over 7,000 frames to go, though, so it's not all cut and dry just yet. There goes the Dale General, though, at the hands of the Orc Bodyguard. That could be pretty key, actually. Could send those Athala Rangers routing in melee pretty quickly, but the Dale Dragon Slayers are trying to retreat, probably to release their payload onto the Orc Bodyguards. I mean, the Dalesmen are routing, though, so the Orc Bodyguards are going to immediately chase them down and engage them. There are only 30 of them, though, so it's going to be a pretty close sort of fight here in this little microcosm of the battlefield. A couple of heavy Goblin Spears as well. The Dale Dragon Slayers are reloading. Will they get a shot off? I don't think so. Nope. They have to pull out their swords. Again, more of them will die. Even if they win this fight, there's not going to be too many of them left alive. These Blackback Berserkers are still alive, however, and the Dalian Paladins are not. Very close fight indeed. These Blackback Berserkers, I think, are trying to get away from the Hornburg Guard, which is probably wise, considering the fact that they've been in a fight for quite a long time. Having said that, the Hornburg Guard are now chasing down the Dalian archers, which it might turn into a battle of cat and mouse between Rohan and Dale. I mean, if we look over here, you can see that Rohan are trying to chase down Dale's archers with their cavalry, but again, they don't really have enough cavalry left, and the Riddermark Horse archers are not very potent in melee. Not enough to deal with all of these archers, particularly the Morroquendi bows, who are going to be quite skilled in melee. Again, victory seems certain. They will take a couple more. There are only 2 horsemen, however. That's not going to be enough to deal with this. Are the Sons of Yawle still alive? There's still some Riddermark archers alive. There's still some Westfold Red Shields and Hornburg Guard. I don't think the Sons of Yawle are alive. Meanwhile, the Blackback Berserkers and the Orc Bodyguards have sort of reunited, and I think they're going to be able to take down these Dale Dragon Slayers. Very back and forth indeed, this fight. Of course, I'm sure you've noticed as well, the Blackback Berserkers have been given a much more high-res sword model. As have the Dale Dragon Slayers, actually. In general, things have been cleaned up, where there was a few sort of oddities with regards to some of the unit models. That has largely been cleaned up, I think. Things are a little bit more high-res these days. Dale Dragon Slayers. Victory seems certain, actually. What are the Orcs of the Misty Mountains doing? Oh, they're going to engage the Hornburg Guard. Not eager to be recharged by the stronger of the 2 units that are accosting them. They're going to try and do some more damage to Rohan's most elite unit that's left on the field, formerly known as the Helmhammers. What is going on over here? The Morroquendi bows, I think, are going to engage the Riddermark archers in melee. The Riddermark archers still have ammunition, actually. Morroquendi bows, maybe they don't have ammunition. But in melee, of course, the elves should win out, but they are taking fire in the side from that small unit of 11 Riddermark archers. That could be key. I mean, it could keep more of Rohan's units alive, which in the end might be enough to win them the battle. Well, you can see that there are those Athala Rangers over there, which in terms of a range threat are certainly more potent. And they are focusing down those Riddermark archers, so the writing might be on the wall for Rohan's units over here. I do like the new Morroquendi unit model. And there go the Riddermark archers, routing in the face of the superiority of the elves. And there go more of the Riddermark archers. So that means, I think, it's only these Red Shields and these Hornburg Guard that are alive, and there's really nothing stopping Dale from just shooting them all to death at this point, I think. That unit of Athala Rangers, I think, will just be able to kill them all. The Hornburg Guard should be able to finish off what's left of the Misty Mountains infantry, however. It's possible the Hornburg Guard could resist a lot of that archer fire. I mean, if you look at their shields, they're clearly designed a little bit more for it. The Westfold Red Shields are coming in. A rear charge might have been more prudent in that situation to try and finish off the Misty Mountains as quickly as possible. Because I'd say the Misty Mountains are probably out of it at this point, but Rohan, they might still be able to pull this off. Maybe. It's unlikely, but maybe. Athala Rangers are coming in, they're going to be reloading. Morroquindi bows again. This is a nice, densely packed ball of troops. It's possible they've come to a bit of an understanding here, and they understand what is going to happen to them if they don't deal with that Dalian archer force. The Athala Rangers. Again, the Morroquindi bows are still alive as well, although whether they have ammunition or not is kind of unknown. I don't think they do, considering the fact they have their swords out. Which means they would probably be the unit to try and cover the Athala Rangers. And again, I think they're probably going to be going for the Hornburg Guard. And the Hornburg Guard, you have to remember, they have been in melee for quite a long time at this point. So their ability to withstand this archer fire, particularly with the body piercing in this densely packed formation, is going to be more limited. None of them are falling yet, though. Well, one of them did. One of them has fallen. And there are these Westfold red shields as well, which will fall much more easily, of course, because they are unshielded. You can see that ranger fire is now, with that body piercing, is enough to sometimes trip units. Those Blackback Berserkers are hiding. Very crafty indeed. So the real question here is, can the Hornburg Guard withstand the archer fire? This is a bit of a litmus test for seeing whether or not archers have been nerfed appropriately, which, considering the Hornburg Guard didn't get wiped out in a single volley, I guess that proves that archers are no longer the pick and win option. See, those are the Morroquindi bows. A bit of a lull in proceedings here. Who is going to take the initiative? The Westfold red shields hiding in behind their shielded brethren. Let's get in a little closer. What to do now? I mean, there are still over 3,000 frames. Very few men left on the field. I mean, the Misty Mountains are not out of it yet, despite having the fewest amount of men. I mean, 13 Blackback Berserkers is a significant amount of men. And also, he still has his general's bodyguard, amazingly. I mean, it's routing. I think that's his general as well, isn't it? There's multiple sort of voices there, despite the fact it's only one of them. So what to do? Have Dale run out of ammunition? That would be my question. Let's go in. No, he still has his bows out. So I think he's going to try and get in a little bit closer to do even more damage. All the Blackback Berserkers have revealed themselves. Is J-Monster going to lay down his life in an attempt to make Rohan win? Rohan needs to go for the Athala Rangers. They need to get into melee with the Athala Rangers and deal with them. More of them are dying again. Blackback Berserkers have never been too great against archers. And now they're going to be going into melee against Morroquindi bows, trying to deal with a few more of them. I would say that the Misty Mountains are really the only ones who don't stand a chance of winning at this point. I mean, never say never, I guess, but I mean, they're going to lose in melee to the Morroquindi bows unless Rohan helps them, and if they do that, then the Athala Rangers are probably going to win the battle for Dale. The Hornburg Guard taking that archer fire to the face like champs, especially considering that their HP have been long expended at this point. Those tower shields standing them in good stead. Oh, hello. Did they just run out of ammunition? They pulled out their swords, which is not a good sign for Dale. Those Athala Rangers, I don't think they're going to be sufficient to deal with the Hornburg Guard. So the Hornburg Guard able to withstand the arrows, and they are going to be able to finish off those Rangers. And Dale, in the end, Morroquindi bows are routing, so Dale are going to be the ones to finish this in last. Last place for Dale. It looked like they were going to win for a long time there. Very back and forth, I like it. And at this point, the Misty Mountains, if they stay out of this fight for as long as possible, the Athala Rangers are trying to escape. I mean, they're probably going to break in the attempt here. Yeah, they're wavering. They're going to make it out, I think. Rangers are very quick, very wriggly. I still can't really call this. I mean, I would put the ball firmly in Rohan's court at this point, simply because I don't think anything left on the field is going to be capable of dealing with the Hornburg Guard. I mean, the Athala Rangers certainly won't. So yeah, it looks like the initially very aggressive Rohan is going to come out of this on top. That was a very, very good fight. Very well. Very finely balanced. It's so nice to see aggression rewarded instead of punished. I mean, initially he could have probably committed a few more cavalry units that initial charge, but other than that, his attack against Dale, which finished it off, it was good. Good stuff. And I had a friend of mine who has always maintained that Rohan have been underpowered. Well, you're going to have to get good now, because Rohan, it seems, are just fine. Obviously, that was in the previous patch, not this one. He hasn't played this one yet. But yes, I think this is going to be it. So I think that the Misty Mountains are pretty much gone. There are 2 Blackback Berserkers still alive. They're trying to get out of combat. I mean, they're not going to be able to take on this amount of Hornburg Guard. I mean, the Athala Rangers are getting munched up by the finest of Rohan. And they're going to have to come back into melee. I think it's just a matter of, can they get a couple more kills? What a back and forth fight that was. As we come to the end, Hornburg Guard are pursuing that one Athala Ranger, the banner carrier, and then they realise, hang on a minute, there's still a couple of Berserkers here that we should probably deal with. No, I don't think that banner carrier is going to come back. So there we go. I don't think I missed too much other than the destruction of that initial unit of Dale Earls. And then a couple of the charges from the Sons of Yore. But Rohan. Oof. Warhammers.
Defeat seems almost certain.
Getting pulverised by one of those hammers doesn't seem like it would be too pleasant. He's fighting. He's eager. He's very tired. And there he goes. So that's going to be it. Rohan victorious with 16 men remaining. Now that was a real fight. As they celebrate. So yeah, Dale getting the most kills. Not too surprising considering that they had a lot of goblins to kill. And then Rohan just behind them. Of course the Misty Mountains are never going to get as many kills as human equivalents. But let's have a look at what they did anyway. The Blackback Mountain Berserkers, I think, were probably the most effective unit. Yes, they were. And then obviously you see Heavy Goblin Spears getting quite a lot of kills. I think that was against stuff like the Dalesmen when they moved forward against Dale. And then down here you can also see that the Heavy Goblin Archers getting a lot of kills. That was mostly, I believe, on the Rohan Horse Archers, of course. That's going to be the issue with Horse Archers. They are obviously much more potent in the current patch, as I'm sure you can see. But they are still quite weak to counterfire. So even a low tier unit like Heavy Goblin Archers is going to be capable of dealing damage to them. There are going to be exceptions to that, of course. Stuff like the Chieftain's Guard and the Red Shields are going to be able to withstand that much more, simply because they are a better unit, more elite, and etc. Again, a lot of like Black Orcs of the Mountains, only 8 kills for them. You know, they got crushed underfoot. I think that was by the Dalian Paladins, or it might have been from the Rohan infantry when it came around and attacked the Misty Mountains from the rear. But that was a very good fight, and the new patch is very, very much taking shape. It's almost there, I would say, based on this fight alone. I mean, only 16 men remaining, very even. 3 players who know what they're doing as well, so it was a very good representation of what you can expect from a very pure expression of a free-for-all here. There's no terrain, it's no nonsense, it's on the grassy plain, of course. Misty as well, so yeah, very, very fun to watch. Big thanks to J Monster for sending it to me, and a big thanks, of course, to him as well for really pushing the patch along, because I think that he's been the driving force more recently of the balancing being sorted out. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next, which I hope will be the Siege of Dol Amroth, because I really want to show off what WK has done, because he's a very talented map maker indeed. So yeah, I hope you'll join me for that, and I hope it works this time.